Okay, so this is our app that we created in the previous video, and all we did was get this far and then we went in and updated the SDK manager. So we didn't really take a look at anything that was in here at that point. So now we're going to dive in a little more deeply and just sort of poke around and get a lay of the land. This user interface can be intimidating to look at first. So there are a lot of different things. Don't try to take in everything all at once. We're going to slowly dive in and use pieces as we need them. But just so that you become familiar with where things are located and how they work, we'll do a basic tour. So the Android project view is over here on the left-hand side. And it has the window and it contains the different source application folders for our project. So first of all, there is a manifests folder, and to expand and collapse these, we click on the little triangle, so we're going to expand that. And the Androidmanifest Xml file, it contains all of the information about the application that Android will need to run it. So we'll be working with it to set things like permissions, what types of hardware equipment the app will need access to, what the minimum SDK is that will be required. So there'll be a number of different times that we'll be popping into the Androidmanifest file to make some updates. The next folder is the Java folder. And under the first one, I'm going to expand that, and there will be main activity. Now I'm just going to double click on this. This is going to open up the main activity Java file, and this is where our Java code is going to go. And in this example, this is the Java code for the main activity, or the screen that you saw here. This is our main activity. So the source code for controlling what happens with this screen is going to go onto this main activity Java file. Now you can see as you open up things, we have the files going across the top here, and we can just click on the tabs to switch back and forth between them. So if we have another activity, we will have another Java file that will go with that activity. Then the next folder is the resources folder. It's just RES for short. And there's a drawable folder in there, and that will contain the graphics that are a part of your app. We have a layout folder that has activity main XML. You can see it's already open here, activity main XML. This is the layout for our activity. And as you have more screens, more activities, they will be appearing here in the layout folder. The other folder that you'll be using to begin with will be working with the values folder. And we can have values in here for things like dimensions, measurements, strings that are a part of our app, and also different styles. So for now, you just need to be familiar with this is where you're going to go when you're looking to access or edit a file that's a part of your project or a part of your app. So as we said, over here you can see a preview of what the app will look like in a sample emulator, and we can actually run and test this in a live emulator. And if you have an Android device such as a phone or a tablet, you can also test it by plugging it into your computer. So just to run and test this in our virtual device, our emulator, up here on the top there's a Run App, the little green triangle for the Run button. So I'm just going to tap that, and it's going to let me choose a device. So if I had an actual phone or tablet plugged in, it should be recognized up here. I'm going to choose the launch emulator, and we had one installed automatically when we did the installation of Android Studio. So we have a Nexus 5 API virtual device. And if you're going to continue to do that test it on that one, then we can just check this off so it doesn't keep asking us every time we go to run this. So I'm going to click OK. Now, working with a virtual device and an emulator, they can be time consuming. So if you have a phone, that could be a little quicker, but we'll be working with creating different virtual devices and emulators. I'm just going to move this out of the way a little bit so you can see. It's too big to fit all in my screen here, but it will take a few minutes. Once it's up, you can leave it up and running and then just continue testing it and rerunning it in the same emulator that you have open. So once it's open, it doesn't take that long every single time, pretty much just when it's getting started. So this will, I'm not tapping anything, I'm just going to let it continue running and loading the app in. So here is my first application and Hello World displaying in the screen. So now let's go back in and make a couple of little changes in here, and then we can rerun and test it. Just going to minimize this bottom window so that we have more real estate here to look at. So I'm going to select Hello World on my screen and scroll down here in the Properties panel, right? If you go up and down through here, one thing is we can see text, and we have this little @ string hello_world. Right, so this is something that we got by default when the app was created. It's considered good form to keep the strings of text that you use in your app in a separate file. And so when we create this, it automatically generated a Strings XML file. And there is actually a good purpose or a good reason for doing that. If we reuse this same text over and over again in different places, it can save on file size because we can reference the same string 100 times, 500 times without making the file itself any larger. In addition, if you are going to do it for localization or translating it to other languages, we can create a Strings XML file for different languages, and then it can just swap the wording in there much easier than hard coding it into our screen and then having to manually go in and change it for a different language. So I'm going to open up the Strings XML file here. I'm just going to double click on it so that you can see what it looks like. And you can see that here's our app name. So if we wanted to change our app name, we could edit it here. We have our Hello World string. And then we also have a name for settings, which we don't really see at this point in our app. So we can change Hello World to Hello Android. And then if I save my file, I'm going to hit the little save button, or you can see Control-S or Command-S will save the update. Then if I go back here to Activity Main, which is our interface, you can see that it updated it to Hello Android. But it's still connected to the string that was originally called Hello World. So now, in the emulator, it didn't update, but I have to run it again. Right, choose a running device. I'm just going to use the same emulator. Click OK. Bring this over here. And then you can see my change has been updated. So as you work in your files, you're going to be adding the strings that you're going to be working with in each of your activities into a resources file. Now, if I wanted to say, instead of Hello World, I wanted to say that this was Hello Android instead, I can update that. I can say Hello Android, and I'll save my file, and I'll come back to Activity Main. Now we have a problem. It says it couldn't resolve. It says rendering problems. It doesn't know what string Hello World is because it no longer exists. So I can come over here, and I could type it in, or I could click on the little ellipse button here. I could go through the list here and say, oh, there's a string here called Hello Android. That's what it should be connected to. So we'll click OK. And now you can see it's updated. So now that you have some basic background about creating your first application, let's look at what happens now that we're finished with it and we want to close our app. So on Android Studio, we're going to go to File and Close Project. Okay, and we're back to the welcome screen where we could go in and open a recent project or create another new one. You can see that the emulator still stays open, so if you're going to start another project and you want to continue using that emulator, leave it open so that you can pick it so it doesn't have to spend all that time to start up and load. If I want to open up the application that I just created, I can go into my recent projects. If it's something that isn't in here, you can also go back to open an existing Android Studio project, navigate to the folders where it was located. Mine was in Android Studio projects, and go to my first application and then click Choose. Right, and it'll bring it back up in here. Click on Project, expand the App folder, the Resources folder, and then the Layout folder. If I want to double click on that in order to open it up to be able to get back into our layout page. So that's just the beginning. We'll be, of course, working with some more as we go along in the next app. But this was your basic introduction to using Android Studio and creating your first basic Hello World application.